In April of 1970, three astronauts, Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise, found themselves farther from home than almost any humans before them, and suddenly fighting for their lives. What was meant to be NASA's smooth, routine trip to the Moon became one of the most dangerous rescue missions in history. This is the unbelievable true story of Apollo 13, the mission NASA would later call a successful failure. The Apollo program was in full swing. Apollo 11 had landed on the Moon. Apollo 12 proved it wasn't a fluke. To the public, spaceflight was starting to feel almost normal. But the engineers knew better. Space never forgives mistakes. Apollo 13's mission was simple: land in the Fra Mauro Highlands, a region scientists believed held secrets about the Moon's early history. Lovell, Haise, and Swigert were trained, confident, and ready. But even before liftoff, the mission was plagued with small issues. A technician dropped a tank, wiring was changed last minute, and the original command module pilot was replaced days before launch due to illness. Still, on April 11th, Apollo 13 launched flawlessly. No one could have predicted what would happen next. 2 days into their journey, the crew performed a routine stirring of the liquid oxygen tanks. A small switch flipped, a fan spun up, and then a deep explosion echoed through the spacecraft. The lights flickered, the ship shuddered, warning alarms blared. Haise looked out the window and saw something terrifying: oxygen venting into space. On the ground, NASA engineers stared at their telemetry screens in disbelief. Commander Lovell's voice crackled through the radio. "Houston, we've had a problem." What he didn't know yet was that the explosion had destroyed an oxygen tank, crippled 2 fuel cells, and left the spacecraft slowly dying. The command module, Odyssey, was losing power fast. The astronauts had only one choice: shut the ship down completely and use the tiny, cramped lunar module, Aquarius, as a lifeboat. The lunar module was designed to support 2 people for 2 days. Now it had to keep 3 men alive for 4 days. Inside, temperatures dropped close to freezing. Condensation formed on every surface. Breathing became difficult as carbon dioxide levels climbed dangerously high. Back on Earth, engineers scrambled to solve impossible problems. They built makeshift devices with whatever the astronauts had on board: plastic bags, cardboard, and duct tape. And unbelievably, it worked. The mailbox, as it was called, filtered out enough CO2 to keep the crew conscious. With no way to land, the crew had to slingshot around the Moon, using its gravity to fling themselves back toward Earth. For a brief moment, the 3 astronauts were farther from Earth than any humans had ever been, and completely powerless. As Apollo 13 passed behind the Moon, all radio contact was lost. For 25 minutes, they were alone in the quiet blackness of space. No one could help them. No one even knew if the spacecraft was stable. When the signal finally returned, the controllers in Houston erupted into cheers. Apollo 13 was still alive, but far from safe. To re-enter Earth's atmosphere, the crew needed to power up the command module with a sequence so precise that even a small error could kill them. But the explosion had wiped out the original procedures. NASA had to invent a new power-up sequence from scratch. Every watt mattered. If they went 1 amp over the limit, the ship would die. Lovell described it as trying to start a car by wiring the battery while driving at highway speed. But against the odds, the system came online. The crew manually aligned the spacecraft using only the Sun and the Earth as reference points, because the stars were invisible through the debris cloud. Re-entry is always violent, but for Apollo 13, it was terrifying. As the capsule hit the atmosphere, it became a fireball streaking across the sky at 40,000 kilometers per hour. A radio blackout followed, normally 3 minutes long. This time, it lasted nearly 4 minutes. Controllers stared at the clock. Families waited in silence. Some began to fear the worst. Then finally, a voice crackled through the speakers. "Odyssey, Houston, welcome home." Cheers erupted as 3 parachutes blossomed in the sky. the capsule splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. Apollo 13 had returned. Apollo 13 never landed on the moon, but it became one of NASA's greatest achievements. A mission defined not by success, but by survival. 3 men lost in space, saved by ingenuity, teamwork, and a refusal to give up. Because in the vast emptiness of space, even the smallest mistake can mean disaster. But even then, humanity finds a way.